Can you believe in evil but not believe in God?
Now, I say in my book that I believe that evil is a real thing. I can't prove it. There are quite a lot of things I can't prove that I couldn't be without. A lot of people jeer when you say evil, especially when the president says it. They say, oh, he's saying things are black and white when they're grey and so forth. You know how many liberals talk. If you put the word lesser in front of evil, you'll find every liberal's willing to use it. They do it every time at elections when they're considering who to vote for. I think that I've been to places where there's no other word for what I've seen. It's the surplus value of sadism and dictatorship and slavery and so on. It's the gratuitous bit on top, the bit that's just there for thrills and that would be done even if it didn't do the perpetrator any good. I mean, the self-destructive, nihilistic element. I can't put it any more strongly than this. And when you smell it, when you see it, you'll know. Hope you never do.
I'm wondering what the positive case was that religion in general is false and Christianity in particular. So I thought maybe one of the arguments was this diversity of religious belief maybe gives you a reason to think that your religion is false or something.
Well, I say the diversity of religious belief is not mysterious if you assume that God is made by man. It's only mysterious if you think that man is made by God. Yeah. Like worrying about why tsunamis kill good people. This is not a problem if you think that we live on a cooling planet with a disturbed weather system. That just will happen, doesn't require any explanation. Nothing to pray over, nothing to why about. Nothing to have a sob fest on CNN about. This question answers itself. It's only a mystery if you don't know that we live on a planet with a cooling crust and a turbulent climate system, and you think, well, maybe God decides at what point weather takes people out. Occam's razor is the critical thing here. Dispose always of unnecessary assumptions. Does the plague break out because we've sinned, and if so, is it because of our divorce rate? Is it because there are too many homosexuals among it? Is it because the Jews have poisoned the wells again? Is it all this? Is it all that? That's what people used to have to ask themselves about, well into the 18th century, until they worked out about the germ theory of the disease. Then they had to encounter people like Dr. Timothy Dwight, the great divine of Yale, who said, well, inoculation would be even worse because it would be an intervention in God's design, which, presuming that God wanted to keep the germ theory of disease from us and have us dying and thinking that disease was a curse, would be true. It would be. Inoculation would be an interference with his design in that case. But this is the kind of mentality one's arguing against all the time. Currently, polio is spreading back across the world. We thought we had eradicated it. A lot of very good secular activists and medical physicians went out to do the eradication. I went with them as far as Bengal. Suddenly, religious people started to say, don't take your children in. This is a plot. Okay, God doesn't want you to do it. It only takes a few uninoculated children and the disease has spread all the way back across Africa now, thanks to faith and the faith-based. If you're going to take credit for all the charitable work, you have to take credit for all the atrocities as well, and it will leave you exactly where you began, with everything still to be explained.
If we are to get rid of religion and religious teachings, what then do we base our morality on? Our model for behaving well or doing good?
Thank you for asking, because I owe it as an answer to Dr. Olasky too. Morality comes from human beings. It's innate in us. We couldn't have got this far without it. Human solidarity requires it. Evolution necessitates it. The golden rule doesn't have to be taught to children. You may have to use a bit of squeeze every now and then to make them conform to it, but they know what it is. They understand it right away. I'll give an example very quickly from each of the two testaments. Do you really believe that the Jewish people got as far as Sinai under the impression that murder, theft, and perjury were okay? And only when they get there are told by God, actually, you've got to cut that shit out now. And those are the commandments in stone. Oh, up till then we thought that was cool. They would not have got as far as... Of course, the story, as I've told you, and as you can easily find by reading my book and others, the story is all bogus, but suppose it to be true, that's the contempt it has for human beings. That they wouldn't know unless told that murder, theft, perjury, to say nothing of adultery, can mess you up. Of course they know. Otherwise we couldn't be having this discussion. We don't need religious permission to find these things out, or supernatural authority for them. Another example quickly from the Second Testament, the good man from Samaria, the man who puts himself out, goes out of his way to help a suffering fellow creature who's described to us by the alleged Jesus of Nazareth, quite clearly wasn't a Christian. He's doing something a while back that Jesus has got to hear about, is telling us about. He wasn't doing it because of Christian teaching, or as far as we know, for any religious teaching. He just saw another human in crisis and did what we all hope we would do, and some of us have sometimes done. Incidentally, if he was a religious Jew, as it's possible that he was, he would have had religious permission not to do that if it was a non-Jew on the other side of that road, because you don't have to help non-Jews, especially on the Lord's holy day, the Shabbat. You can leave them weltering in their own blood. In fact, you may be ordered to do so rather than break a commandment. So once again, only religion could make people act in a bad way in such a circumstance. Ordinary humanism is more than enough. All else is superfluous, explains nothing, and or leaves everything remaining to be explained. QED. Thank you.
But I did want to ask, y'all used to be Marxist running buddies, and now you're war in Iraq running buddies. Is this the product of vanity, ideology, or perhaps some sort of religious commonality?
I regard the war in Iraq as part of the war against religion. The faith-based parties of God are trying to level Iraq to barbarism, and they're very nearly succeeding. As well as killing each other's children, their fellow Muslim children, which they don't scruple to do, they want to reduce by their religious precepts a once highly civilized and sophisticated society to the level of Somalia or Afghanistan, which is what happens, by the way, to any country when you try to run it out of a holy book. I think we should hereby highly resolve that no country of such importance and no people of such civilization who've been through so much and to whom we've promised so much shall ever be governed that way. We will not abandon them. The jihadists will never have Iraq. What we're doing there is one of the noblest undertakings the United States has ever made.
But as to the question, may I follow up just briefly? As to the question, though, isn't it odd to find yourself allied with perhaps the most religious, fundamentally religious administration the United States has had in recent memory, and with a fundamentalist and evangelical, or perhaps even a dominionist like Mr. Olasky, who coined the term compassionate conservatism? We've seen how that's worked out.
I perfectly understand that. I mean, all my friends in Iraq, my Iraqi and Arab and Kurdish friends in Iraq are all secularists. For all I know, every member of the 82nd Airborne Division is a professional snake handler. But what they happen to be fighting for is a secular Iraq. So I would think the irony was at the expense of the religious rather than the secular.
How do you answer Pascal's wager?
Pascal's wager, in case it's not known to you, comes from Blaise Pascal, who addresses his pensée to the one who is so made as that they cannot believe. That's me. And he says, well, let me put it to you like this. What have you got to lose? If you bet God exists and loves you and you're wrong, you're no worse off than you were already. If you bet and you're right, there is no such thing. You're no worse off than you were already. If you're wrong and there is, you win, as long as you have said you agree with him. So why don't you do it now while there's still time? I have two comments on this. One, religious hucksterism of the cheapest, vulgarest, nastiest kind it's possible to imagine. He says, what do you got to lose? I've got a good offer for you. Come into my used car lot. Come on, baby, just lie a little, and you never know. No, don't talk to me like that, and don't call it piety when you do, or be prepared to have piety despised. Second, Bertrand Russell, when asked this question, said that if confronted with his maker, he would say, I used to be able to do his accent, "Oh Lord, you did not give us enough evidence." I would go a little further. I would say, well, look, boss, if it's true what they say about you, that you're an infinitely kind, forgiving, all-fatherly person, this is certainly what your fans keep saying, do you not have a little room in your, obviously very capacious heart for someone who just couldn't bring himself to believe in you and really, honestly, truly couldn't? As opposed to someone who won't spend half their life on their knees making fawning professions of faith because Pascal told them it was a good bet. Which of us is the more moral? Which of us is the more honest? Which of us is the more courageous? Which of us has the bluest eyes and is the most sexually attractive? Which of us has the real charisma here? I'm just only asking.
Well,
He's running away.